Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge. Today we are continuing our Days of Decision World in Flames campaign with the second half of 1937. We'll be picking up specifically with the July-August turn. Now, last time out we saw Italy's fumbled coup attempt in Spain explode into the Spanish Civil War. While the nationalists grabbed the lion's share of the Navy, on land it's the Republicans that have the edge, but it's not a decisive edge. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold there. I know both sides are frantically trying to consolidate their position as well as build up their forces to try to take on their opponents. And we'll see if perhaps some major powers decide to get involved in the Civil War there as things drag on. Other than that, things are pretty quiet elsewhere in the rest of the world. So let's go ahead and get started and see what the political phase this turn is going to bring. Well, the major powers have recorded their bids for political initiative this turn, but we'll start off as usual with a quick rundown on the money on hand for each of the major powers. Now, Germany, the Commonwealth, and France are the richest nations currently with 5 money on hand. Then there's quite a bit of a drop-off. China and Italy are next with 1 each. The United States and the Soviet Union have 0, and then Japan is still not out of debt yet. She starts this turn at -2. So as you can imagine, again, the lack of funds is limiting the amount of political activity that many of the major powers are engaged in this turn. And we only had 3 countries that actually bid for a political option. Those would be Germany, Commonwealth, and France, perhaps unsurprisingly, given that they are the wealthiest countries at the moment. Germany, sitting in the first position from last turn, knows she's going to get a +4, makes her bidding, she can be much more efficient, if you will, with the amount of money she has to spend in order to get a decent initiative position. So therefore she restricted her bid to 1. The Commonwealth, which you can see here, is all the way down in the 8th position, getting no bid modifier. Went ahead and is trying to balance bidding to get a decent position versus spending too much money. She's still going to have to spend some money on whatever political options she ends up doing. And she's got a lot of naval projects in the construction pool right now, as well as plans to lay down even more ships. So she's can't afford to go crazy on her bid. She decided to bid a total of 2, which may or may not be a little underbidding what perhaps she wants to do. So she bids 2, and then France, again, France keeping an eye on the cash on hand, only bid 1. Now, France is going to be getting a bid modifier there, so that did play into the French decision somewhat. So what that means is you've got Germany bidding 1, +4 is a total of 5, and that's going to leave Germany in the first position. Next, France, with her bid of 1 +2, gives her a total of 3, and that's good enough to move her into second position. The Commonwealth bid 2, unfortunately has no modifier, but given that the other 5 powers are not bidding, that's still good enough to place the UK or the Commonwealth into third position. Now, among the 5 powers that did not bid, we actually have a couple that were tied with 3, and that would be Japan and Italy. With the tiebreaker, you can see the Italian political effectiveness is higher than the Japanese. So the Italians are going to win that tie break and come in at 4th, and that means Japan is going to slip down here to 5th position. After that, we have, let's see, who came in 6th there? It should be the USSR with a +2. And then you can see the United States and China each had 0 +1 for a grand total of 1. However, the U.S. political effectiveness is currently sitting at a 2 with Japan, which is greater than China. So their relative positions are not going to change, but they are going to drop down 1 position each on the initiative. And we know we had 3 bidders, so we'll place our second last card marker next to the Commonwealth. And that brings us, as usual, over to Germany for the first option of the turn. Germany, as you can see here, is going to choose IPO3, Minor Alliance, and she is going to focus again on Sweden. She already has one alliance signed with Sweden. This will give her a second alliance, which will kind of freeze out any of the other major powers. What it will do is it will force any major power that wants to make an alliance with Sweden. They're going to have to force Germany to break one of her alliances, which is more difficult than just signing the alliance. So more importantly, this alliance should draw Sweden even closer to Germany, which has been her goal over the past year and a half, is to get to the point where Sweden is stacked basically with Germany on the status display, allowing Germany to bring Sweden into any future wars. The cost for this is going to be 5 money, which after the one that she bid for initiative is going to take Germany down to a total of -1 for the moment, heading into production later this turn. Now, the alliance is not a guaranteed thing. It's going to be a die roll. And you can see if we're successful, we'll apply the treaty chart, as well as the U.S. entry will come off of the treaty chart. So to make this die roll, we've got to roll 1 die, and we need a result greater than 0. What we're going to do is add 1 to the result for each factory or resource marker you have in that minor. Germany actually has 4 resource markers. She's getting all 4 resources that Sweden has. So that's a +4. Then you're going to add the minor's willpower. And for Sweden, they have a very low willpower, which means it's actually kind of a strong-willed country, of 2. So that's going to bring it up to 6. Then we're going to subtract our initiative position. First position, subtract 1, drops us to 5. Now we have to subtract the distance in hexes on the status display, and currently Sweden is 3 hexes from Germany. So that 5 minus 3 drops us to 2, which, no matter what we roll on the die, is going to be greater than 1. So a 10, again, rather a bit of overkill there on the die roll. The alliance is successful, which means we will be in, as far as the effects on the minor countries, and the U.S. will be using the treaty chart. And for Sweden, it's going to be, it's 1936, 1937. For the U.S., it's going to be another +4 for the U.S. entry against Germany. And then there are just a handful of countries, mostly Scandinavian countries, that are going to be impacted by the signing of this alliance. I'm going to go ahead and mark those on the map, and then I'll go over them on the map, and we'll choose a minor country for Germany to activate, and then we'll wrap it up with the die roll to see if Germany ends the political phase, as she has a bad habit of doing so far in this game. So we'll head over to the map. Well, in addition to the U.S. entry increasing by 4, the minor countries that were affected by this treaty signing, the Baltic states didn't like it too much. They received a -1 influence. Denmark really did not care for it. That was a -2. Finland, Germany picked up a +1 influence in Finland as well as in Norway. Poland, not a big fan with the -1. And then finally Sweden, Germany gained 3 positive influence in Sweden. And that was really, I think it was the influence that Germany was really after in selecting this option and signing yet another alliance with Sweden, because Sweden is going to be the minor country that Germany activates. So let's go ahead and grab the control marker, and we'll head to the status display. Here in the status display, you can see why Germany decided to sign a second alliance with Sweden. We've got our +3 influence marker here. It's the only one to resolve. Sweden is normally going to cost 2 to move towards Germany. However, she is crossing a boundary here from the neutral zone into the fascist ideology, specifically the paternal monarchist faction, which is going to increase it by 1. It's going to bring the total cost to 3 in order to move Sweden, which is what the alliance signing gave Germany. So Sweden will in fact move into the fascist ideology, and so After a year and a half of political and diplomatic efforts, Germany has managed to pull Sweden into the fascist ideology. Now, she's not quite there yet. She still would like to get her another 2 hexes actually in the hex with Germany in order to eventually give Germany sort of full control or align, be able to align Sweden with her and get access to the rather sizable military that Sweden has for a minor country in the game. But now that Sweden is in the fascist ideology, we know that the cost of moving towards Germany within the same ideology is going to be reduced by 1, which is going to offset that increased cost by crossing these boundary lines. So it's not going to necessarily be any easier to bring Sweden towards Germany, but at least it's not going to cost any more because of the boundary crossings. So we'll see how hard Germany continues to pursue Sweden at this point, or if she begins to shift her focus maybe somewhere else. With that, we just have to make a roll to see if Germany ends the political affairs phase. And again, it's the first option, so it's no die roll modifier to the dice, and it's going to be anything but a 1. And they teased us. It was close. There's a 2. So the political phase will continue, and now France is up. Now, even though France has a requirement to conduct an election at some point this year, 1937, and she has not done so yet, she is not going to choose that option this turn. Instead, she's going to go with French option 0F, agree to a proposal. She has coordinated this with the Commonwealth at the beginning of the turn. We've talked about how they have a level 1 treaty currently, but what they really want to get to is at least a level 2 treaty, which will allow a British expeditionary force to fight alongside France in France itself, in the home country. So in anticipation of the Commonwealth proposing that treaty, France is going to go with agree to a proposal. You can see it costs 0 money. There are no minor country effects, no U.S. entry effect, and while it doesn't explicitly say in the rules, I'm not so sure that France will get to activate a minor country with this option, since it's not necessarily a political option, rather it is just responding to someone else's political option. So I'm going to house rule this, make it a judgment call, if you will, that selecting option 0F will not cause a minor country to be activated. If anyone more familiar with Days of Decision, if the rules, if you can find somewhere in there where it does kind of explicitly talk about this, please let me know in the comments below. But for now, we're going to consider this as a non-event as far as activating minor countries, which means the only thing we have to do is roll to see if France ends the political phase before the Commonwealth gets to go, which would be not really in the plans. So because Germany did do 1 political option prior to this, we are going to have a -1 die roll modifier. So a 1 or a 2 will see the phase ended, but fortunately France manages to roll a 4, which means we can move right along to the Commonwealth and we'll execute their political option. And I think we all know what's coming. Well, it would appear that Chamberlain has screwed up. The intention was to play Commonwealth option 3 treaty with France and get that level 2 treaty signed. However, they didn't look at the prerequisites closely enough, and it says that your initiative position must be less than the other major powers, and that is not the case because France moved into the 2nd position. Commonwealth is in 3rd position, so the treaty is off the table this turn, and the French are a little peeved at that because they've just wasted 1 franc in their bid, and they could have, more importantly, they could have gone ahead and held their election this turn. So instead, desperately casting around for something productive to get out of this turn, the Commonwealth is going to actually end up signing a minor economic agreement, and they're going to sign that agreement with Saudi Arabia to try to get access to their oil. This is going to cost them 4 money, which was the same amount that it was going to cost them to played the treaty, this isn't necessarily going to have any immediate effect on their production. I think they, matter of fact, I'm not even sure if they have enough tanker points to get access to the oil. It's pretty close because they've been building tanker points at a steady rate so far in the game. So the Commonwealth does manage to get the lone Saudi oil. That's going to have a +1 influence for them in Saudi Arabia. There's no effect on U.S. entry. We've already paid the 4 money for it, which actually drops the Commonwealth to -1 along with Germany for this turn. I'll go ahead and place the influence over there in Saudi Arabia, and then we'll take a look and see which minor country the Commonwealth wants to activate. There are a couple of candidates out there, so let's take a look at the map and see what it looks like. Looking here at Saudi Arabia, you can see they already had +1 Commonwealth influence there. So by signing the minor economic agreement, that's actually going to increase to a +2. The Italians have a +1 influence in there. Were the Commonwealth to go ahead and activate Saudi Arabia at this point, they would be able to shift Saudi 1 hex closer to them, and that Italian influence would just be wasted. It's a thought, although Saudi Arabia is not super crucial as far as minor countries go, at least at this point in time. Commonwealth also is looking closer to Central and Eastern Europe, though. You can see here there's quite a number of control markers in Czechoslovakia currently, as well as Poland. Now, in both countries, Commonwealth does have +2 influence, so that's going to move the marker at least 1 hex towards them regardless. Just as importantly, Germany has some negative influence in both countries, -3 in Czechoslovakia right now and -2 in Poland. So the question is, does the Commonwealth want to go ahead and just follow up with Saudi and nudge them a little bit in their direction, or do they maybe want to activate one of these 2, I would say more important but more strategically located minor countries and potentially shift them more than a hex towards the UK, or the Commonwealth rather? So I think this -3 here with Germany and Czechoslovakia would be kind of nice if we could nudge that up to like a -4 or -6. That way we're not really kind of wasting that odd influence there. Plus you can see Italy and the Soviet Union also have -1 influences. They may be doing some stuff over the next few turns that would increase that negative influence, which again would put Czechoslovakia more solidly in the let's say the Allied or the Democratic camp. So with that, I think we are going to go ahead and let's go ahead and activate Poland here. So we're going to grab the 3 control markers here, and then we're going to head over to the status display. At the status display, you can see the Poland marker is located here. Here's Germany and the Commonwealth. We have 3 control markers to resolve. First thing we'll do is resolve the Soviet Union. That's a +1, which is not going to move Poland at all. And now I don't think it really matters which order we resolve these 2 markers in. So we'll go Germany with their -2. That's going to move Poland 1 hex further away from Germany here, and then with the Commonwealth +2, that's going to draw Poland 1 hex closer to the Commonwealth. So Poland making a bit of a shift across the neutral zone there. Still quite a ways from the Democrat ideology, much less any of the major powers in the Democratic ideology, but I think the Commonwealth is reasonably happy with the outcome considering the mistake they made initially. So I guess it's back to the drawing board for the democracy's next turn to see if maybe they can manage to do this thing right and get that level 2 treaty signed. Now, we don't have to roll for the end of the political phase because the Commonwealth was the last nation that bid. So that is going to automatically end the political phase. What I'll do now is I'll roll for initiative, I'll roll for weather, and then we'll take a look at the reinforcements that are arriving as we move into the whiff portion of the turn now. Well, the weather roll was a 2, which means we're looking at fine weather everywhere except the north monsoon zone where it's going to be rain. And we can expect pretty good weather everywhere, at least where it matters as far as Spain is concerned this turn. The impulse marker is going to go up 1 box after each impulse. And for initiative, the fascists rolled a 10. They have a +2 to give them a total of 12. The communists rolled a 2. They have a +1 for a total of 3. And the Democrats rolled a 4 with their +0. That was good enough to put them ahead of the communists. Now, they decided the Democrats could have opted to go after the communists, but if they did that, that would kind of allow the fascists to insert themselves ahead of the Democrats and behind the communists. So the Democrats kind of wanted to force the fascists to go first, hoping that maybe the fascists end the turn early, and that would allow, that would kind of force them off of that +2, or at least improve the initiative modifiers for the Democrats and the communists. So the order that we're going to end up going in is it's going to be the fascists are going to be first, then the Democrats, and then finally the communists. Now, looking at the production circle here, you can see July, August, we have a fair number of reinforcements arriving. The nationalists were able to build a militia, which is going to arrive in Cartagena. The Soviets are getting another garrison, and the Japanese built their special naval landing forces. So a Marine Corps for the Japanese. I would expect this is being built. Marines are not cheap units at 5 build points, and for the Japanese to build a unit like this probably means they intend to use it somewhere in the not too distant future. The Commonwealth receives a convoy point and a tanker point. The French are also getting a tanker point. The United States gets a carrier plane, which will go into the reserve pool, and then the Commonwealth is getting HMS Liverpool and Gloucester, which will both go into the construction pool, while the Americans, looks like they're going to get 3 light cruisers, USS Phoenix, Wichita, and the heavy cruiser Houston. So 3 more cruisers for the U.S. there. All right, we'll get the on-map reinforcements placed, and then we will start with the fascists first up with impulse number 1. Now, here's the situation in Spain after the reinforcements have arrived at the beginning of the turn. This turn, you can see the militia unit there in Cartagena. The Italians are doing a combined impulse, and the Spanish Navy is not planning on sortying at all this turn, which means the Italians were able to take their naval move and get the transport carrying their headquarters out of Eritrea. It's reached the Eastern Mediterranean, so by the end of the turn, they'll have their headquarters back in Italy. And we've kind of skipped several phases here. We're all the way up to land movement, and the situation for the nationalists right now is they're a little outgunned, and they're kind of spread out a bit. You can see most of their power is here in the northeast of Spain, but they do have some units here in the south and the southeast. The issue they're trying to have is they need to consolidate, and ideally they'd love to eventually start pushing the Republicans out of Zaragoza here and working obviously towards Madrid. But it's going to take them a few turns to build up their forces, and the question they're running into is how do they get these units? Do they leave these units down here in the south? Because right now they are in supply from the resource hex here, and also with the major port of Cartagena, they are in supply through the Western Mediterranean. But these 2 units are pretty weak, and Cartagena being in the clear and not being a city, just a port, is not a really defensible location. So they would prefer to have these guys be able to, like I said, consolidate with the rest of the forces up here in the north where they could be more effective. But it's going to be a little tricky trying to extricate them from their current situation, because they are, in a way, surrounded, if you will, by the Republican forces. And as soon as this cavalry corps abandons this resource hex, they're going to lose that as a supply source, because the Republicans will undoubtedly move in and control that. And Cartagena not being very defensible, they don't really want to leave the mountains just to head to Cartagena. So how do we get these guys back up to the north here without them getting eliminated or keeping them in supply? And I think what we're going to try to do is we are going to have them head this way. That's 1, 2, 3 for the militia. It's going to put them in the mountains there just west of Valencia. The cavalry is going to essentially follow. We've got 2, 3, and there's 4, 5. We'll see what the Republicans decide to do, but I think the thought is for the nationalists that even if they're out of supply, if they're face up, they can move. As long as they don't get sort of blocked in here, this hex to the north of Valencia is on the coast, which means they would be able to trace supply being on the coast, I believe, and they would just then slowly withdraw back up the coast here. That is, if the Republicans don't manage to cut them off. So we'll see what the Republican response is, but that is that's basically all that's really happening for the fascist impulse. The Japanese don't really have anything to do, neither do the Germans. So with that, we're moving on to the Democrat impulse, and then we'll get to the Communist first impulse. Well, we're staying right here for the Democrats' impulse, since the Commonwealth, the U.S., China, and France even really don't have anything that they are doing this turn, which means the Republicans really have all of the French action limits to use themselves. That's going to be 3 land moves and up to 1 land attack. Now, for the Republicans, they desperately want to keep these 2 units from getting back up to nationalist territory in the northeast. They are going to go ahead and regain control of the resource hex there, which is going to help as far as the production differential goes. Now, is there a way to trap these guys, if you will? So the cavalry is going to pursue. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And the big question is, do we bring this corps out of Zaragoza down to this hex here, which would effectively cut off their ability to escape, or maybe bring him to this hex, actually probably a little bit better. That would basically stop their movement in either of these 2 hexes if they decide to go ahead and move. The problem with bringing this corps down is then obviously it leaves Zaragoza unoccupied, and the nationalists may go ahead and move in there, which means essentially all we've done is just traded this resource hex for Zaragoza here in the north. Is that worth it to try to surround and destroy these 2 nationalist units? That's a fair chunk of their on-map forces right now. So I think, you know what, I think we will go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3 there. There's their 3 land moves. Now we could launch an attack here. We do have the garrison in Valencia, which is a 4, and the cavalry, which is a 3. That's a 7. The defenders, though, would have a strength of 4, and that's going to be doubled for the mountains is 8. So we're not even at a 1-to-1 column on the attack. There would be the 3-to-2, and that doesn't look terribly favorable to the Republicans, especially if they wait just another impulse. They should be able to get a lot more firepower, if you will, to bear on the nationalists there. So I think that's probably going to be it for the Democrat impulse, and that'll move us on to the communists. And I can tell you the communists, all they did was they had that garrison that they received as a reinforcement. They placed that in Sevastopol, and there's really nothing else that they are doing, no moves or whatnot. So that's going to bring us all the way around to another weather roll and the next set of impulses. Well, for the second set of impulses, the weather roll was a 3, which gives us the exact same weather as last time, where it's going to be fine everywhere except North Monsoon, where we have some rain. We are going to basically just kind of keep it here in Spain because there is literally nothing else going on anywhere else on the maps. Neither the Germans nor the Japanese have anything that they're going to be doing this impulse. The Italians, they've already got their transport at sea carrying their headquarters home from East Africa. They really don't have anything else they want to do, which means we're going to be focusing right here on the Spanish nationalists, and it does mean that the Spanish nationalists will be able to use all of the impulse limits that the Italians would normally have. And again, just to remind you of that, that's 1 naval move, 1 rail move, up to 3 land moves, and 1 land attack. If they had any aircraft, they could do 3 air missions. But as you can see right now, neither side has any aircraft in Spain. So I think again, we come back to this issue that the nationalists are trying to figure out how to get these 2 corps back up with the rest of their forces in the north. Now they've managed to move just west of Valencia here. However, they are now out of supply. You can see the resource that would have served as a supply source for them has been captured by the Republicans. And furthermore, they've got the Spanish Corps here that is exerting a ZOC. They're also beyond 4 hexes from any other potential sources of supply. Cartagena also was captured as the Republican cavalry moved through their last impulse. So they are face up, so they still can move, but they will be turned face down at the end of this move. If they're face down and out of supply, that's going to reduce their strength to 1 each, which they really don't want to do. But you can see the Republican noose is sort of closing tightly around them. The plan was to try to slide up the coast here towards Barcelona. And I think what we're going to do is probably continue that. I'm going to move the stack here just so you can see there is just a little bit of coastline here in the hex north of Valencia. And so long as they are in the coast there, and they can trace through the Western Med to Barcelona and still be in supply. Now, they will be face down, so they won't be moving any further this turn unless they could somehow get reorganized. So we have to be careful how we do this. One of the considerations is if they're here on the coast, the Republican Navy could sail out into the West Med, and without any other national units present, they could cut that supply line. So in the naval phase, we're going to move one of our cruisers out to ensure that the supply line is intact, and I think we're going to go ahead and place the cruiser out here in the 4 section of the sea box. Now we come to our land movement, and we will go ahead and move both of these here, because if we had stayed where we were, then the Republicans most likely would have slid in and physically blocked that location while bringing in some more units to really surround them with no hope of them getting out. Now, they're still not out of the woods yet. They are still in supply, but they are going to be vulnerable here over the next probably turn or 2 before they can maybe get clear of the Republicans. With that 2 land moves, we have 1 land move left, and the Republicans are certainly not going to miss the opportunity to bring their best unit down here and capture Zaragoza. That's going to offset the loss of the resource down in the south there as far as production goes. So with that, we don't really have any combat we're going to undertake or are able to take, quite frankly. So we're going to move on to the Democrats and then the Communists' second impulses. Moving on to the the Democrats' second impulse. Again, there's nothing really any of the other Democrats are doing elsewhere, so we'll just stay here in Spain and deal with the Republicans. The Republicans, again, will have access to then all of the activity limits under the French combined impulse type. So that's, again, 3 land moves, 1 naval move, 1 rail move, and 1 land attack. And the question is, what can we do with the nationalists we have here that are face down? With 2 units face down, that's going to give them a +2, which is very tempting. We've got a 4 strength garrison here and a 4 strength infantry unit there. We could move the cavalry, and that would give us an 11 to 8 attack, which is just short of the 3 to 2, but that would put us on the 1 to 1 +2. That's if we look at the assault table, we'd need to roll a 4 to kill something, but that would be probably one of the worst results, because that would result in 2 Republican unit losses for only 1 nationalist unit. If we can roll, we would need basically a 6 on the dice or better in order to come out even or ahead. And since they do have a bit of an advantage in numbers over the nationalists now, the Republicans aren't afraid of exchanging. They're perfectly content with that. But I don't know if we want to maybe wait just another impulse, because I don't think we're going to be able to get anybody else in here to attack them this turn. I think what we will do is we'll move the infantry corps here. That's 2, 3, and we'll bring the cavalry unit into Valencia there. And we've got 1 more unit we can move. And I think what we might want to do is bring this division, start to bring them down from the northwest. That may allow the nationalists to go grab that resource, but it'll be nice to have this division to take any potential losses. Still be another, probably another couple impulses before they'd be in position to make an attack. We do have 2 units here in Madrid. We've got the Madrid militia, which is a decent unit, and then a small garrison division. I don't think they dare move that militia unit out of Madrid at this point, since losing Madrid would be a big loss. That would be 1 for the city and 2 more for the 2 factories there. That'd be a 3-point production swing, which again, they don't want to risk that. So I think they will be content to just continue to press up. The nationalists certainly aren't going anywhere. If it's a long turn, which is what the Republicans are hoping for, that should give them enough time to gather their forces, concentrate, and make not a good attack, certainly. I think the best they can hope for is well, probably a 3 to 2, if I'm honest, but every little bit counts when you get onto the combat table, and since there's not a real, they don't have a lot of margin for error here, so none of their attacks, I think, by either side are going to be terribly high odds, which means you want to be kind of careful when you do make the attacks, and don't make anything unnecessary, and really you're just kind of praying for good dice at this point, because bad dice could in fact be a little disastrous. So I think that's going to wrap up the Democrats' second impulse, and that brings us to the Communist second impulse. They are doing nothing, and with that I will go ahead and bring it back around to the fascists. For their third impulse, we'll have to roll weather and then see what happens from there. Weather roll this time is a 7. The only change from the previous weather is that the rain in North Monsoon has turned into storm down there, but that's not going to affect anyone through this set of impulses. So we'll go right back to the Spanish Civil War that's currently underway. And, you know, the Spaniards, I think, will go ahead and, why not, they'll send another ship out. Remember, they can, the first oil-dependent unit of the impulse that they move is free, so they are able to very slowly send units out one at a time. Now, they could have sailed the entire task force out if they wanted to into that same destination for one naval move. It's not the it's not that naval move limitation. This is more of an oil limitation, that they're trying to conserve the 8/10 of an oil that they have left for later on when it'll be a little more perhaps useful. Skipping through a number of the steps in the sequence of play, we're pretty much right up to land movement again. Actually, I take that back. We're going to stop at the rail movement step, and the the nationalists are going to go ahead and rail this garrison out here to Bilbao, along the rail line here through Zaragoza. Now we get to the land movement, where we get 3 land moves, and they're going to bring this infantry corps into the mountains there, and then they're going to have the infantry corps up here come 2, 3 to right there, and they don't have anything else they want to move. They have a garrison division here in Barcelona, but they're going to leave that unit there. We'll see. I guess we'll see what happens. That's going to do it for the fascist impulse. There is no chance for the turn to end yet, which means we'll go right into the Democrats impulse. And again, staying here in Spain, the Republicans really don't feel like they want to take a chance and sortie their fleet here against the nationalist ships out there. They could potentially have a bit of an advantage if they were to find one or the other. But again, naval combat is can be risky, can be a little dicey in WiFCE. It's one of the things that makes it kind of fun, but it's also something where you can't necessarily be assured of something happening, of what you want to happen actually happening. I've seen tons of games where some unfortunate search dice roll have really turned the tables on even extremely superior fleets versus some smaller inferior fleets. So Spanish Republican Navy is going to stay put in port. Again, that's going to bring us up to the land move, since they have no rail moves. That is going to allow the guard unit here to move up, and we're going to move the division. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 into Madrid. Now is decision time. It is 9. They can bring 9, 12. They can bring 16 attack factors against a total of 4 defensive factors. Doubled for the mountains is 8. 16 to 8 is actually right at 2 to 1, which is better than they thought they might do. And it's going to be a 2 to 1 plus 2. And you know, I mean, it's not great. They would need a 4 or better to really get the exchange that they're looking for, or exchange or better. They roll a 3 again, they would lose 2 to 1 for the nationalists. Anything less than that, so a 1, 2, or 3 would be bad. Would it be devastating? Well, you know, I don't know. It's hard to say. Potentially, it would be nice. It would be certainly an easier decision if the infantry division were up here and could take one of the potential 2 losses that they face. On the other hand, is it going to get any better for them? Well, I mean, it will get better next impulse. If they can get one more impulse, the division will be able to make it and be there to absorb any of the losses. Can the nationalists really do anything to help themselves out? And I really don't see that being the case. They can't move any more units into the hex since it's fully stacked already. I don't know if they can maybe... they might be able to use this transport here to, if they were to sail that transport out, they might be able to reorganize at least one of those units, which would drop it from a +2 to a +1 on the 2 to 1, which basically is that 3 to 2 would be the same as a 3 to 2 + 2, basically. You know what, I think we'll take that chance. If the nationalists decide to do that and try to reorganize one of those guys, that's fine. We'll have the division in place next impulse. So I think we're going to forego the attack this impulse, and I don't think there's anything else the Democrats are doing. No, and then there's still no chance to end it. It would end on a 0. So we'll go to the communist impulse. They aren't doing anything, so so that impulse is wrapped up, and also needing a 0 to end the turn. So that's not happening. I'll bring us back to the fascist for the third set of impulses. The weather roll this time was a 4, and all that did was change the storm and north monsoon back to rain. So same weather as we had the first couple of impulses. And with the fascists pretty much done everywhere except Spain, we're going to focus there. I think the nationalists are going to go ahead and bring out their transport here, and that's the primary reason why they sailed España out last impulse. They did not want to leave the transport in a section of the sea box alone on the off chance that the Republicans were able to sail out and find it. So we've done our naval moves. We've got no naval combat. There's no air stuff, no rail movement. Now back to land movement. And with the land movement, I think we will continue to bring this unit into Zaragoza there. There's not much we can really do with the guard, the Nationalist Guard Corps there. So I think that's it for the land movement. There's no air transport, no debark, invasions, or paradrops, no combat, obviously. No air rebases. Reorganization, we will go ahead and flip the transport over here to reorganize one of these units at least. We'll leave the militia face down. Do we want to... Is it going to matter? Let's see. Now let's try to keep this guy face up. All right, we'll leave the cavalry face down and reorganize the militia corps. That's going to bring us to the end of the fascists. What is this? I think the 4th impulse. Again, we need a 0 to end the turn, so it's going to advance over to the Democrats. And at the end of the Democrats' impulse, that'll be the first opportunity we'll have to end the turn on a 1 or less. All right, with the Democrats, we've got no naval or air activity that we're doing, no rail movements. That brings us up to land movement, and they are going to bring the division into the fight here. And now they are going to go ahead and make that attack that they were considering last impulse now. Even though they did lose a +1, they at least have a cheap unit and small unit that they can afford to lose. So looking at this again, we've got 5, 10, and from Valencia we've got another 7 for a total of 17. 17 to 4. 4 is doubled for the mountains. 8, 17 to 8, that's 2 to 1. Now, the defender actually gets a choice of combat table, blitzkrieg table, or assault table. Now, if we're looking at the assault table, again, it's going to be 2 to 1 plus 1 this time. So there's a 50% chance that things turn out better for the nationalists than for the attacking Republicans on the assault table. But there is a possibility that looks like a 30-40% chance of the defenders being wiped out on the assault table. On the blitzkrieg table, there is a much better chance of the defenders actually surviving. In fact, it'll be impossible to kill both of those units on the blitzkrieg table. There's a good chance they will simply end up retreating, which works to the nationalists' advantage. The flip side is they won't be killing very many Republicans. So you know what? I think the nationalists are going to go ahead and see if they can get their troops to survive here. We're going to go 2 to 1 on the blitzkrieg table, and let's see how this attack works out. All right, the first big attack of the Spanish Civil War here, and the Republicans have massed just about all of their troops against a couple of the nationalist corps holed up in the mountains north of Valencia. Here's the die roll. They're looking for something big here, and that is not good. That's a 2. I don't know if we could see that a little bit better. There you go. That's a 2 plus 1 gives us a 3 on the 2 to 1 blitzkrieg table. That's going to be 1 attacker loss and no defender losses, if you could just make that out right here. So if they had rolled just 1 higher, they would have at least exchanged with them. But now the Republicans are glad they brought the division in, as that can absorb that loss. All right, so we now implement those results. It's 1 loss to the attackers. That will be the division that will be eliminated, and because there was no asterisk, all the attackers are going to be turned face down, which could prove interesting depending upon how long this turn goes and how, I guess, how adventuresome the nationalists are feeling. And for those of you that are curious, had the attack been resolved on the assault table, a 3 on the 2-to-1 column of the assault table is the exact same result. 1 attacker loss, no defender losses. And because the attackers lost more than the defenders, the militia unit is not going to be turned face down. So, with the failed attack and no means of reorganizing any of their face down units, that's probably going to bring most of the Republican activity, at least for the turn, to an end. We'll see what the nationalists decide to do if they get the opportunity, because now the the Democrats have a chance of ending the turn. Let's see what happens here. They'll only end it on a 1, so it's likely to continue. And the 4 indicates that it will in fact continue. Let's see, we've got, now that's going to bring us to the communist impulse. Communists aren't doing anything. They also need a 1 to end the turn. And they roll a 4 as well. So it'll continue here. I'll go ahead and make the weather roll, and then we'll resume with the fascist next impulse. The weather roll this time was a 9, and all that did was flip that rain in North Monsoon back to storm. So it's just been kind of flip-flopping back and forth between rain and storm down there. Everywhere else is fine, and again, the impulse marker is only moving up 1 box after each impulse. For the nationalists here, now it's kind of decision time. They do have this militia unit face up once again, which means it's able to move and potentially attack. They have a couple of face-up units here, and the Republicans are face down, so they would be getting a +1 if they were to attack either of these hexes, a +2 if they attacked Valencia, but I don't think there's any way they can really get enough combat power to realistically get an attack on Valencia. Looking here, this is a 4 strength unit. That would be doubled to 8. Even if they brought all 3, they're looking at 12 to 8. That's a 3 to 2. We've seen what a 2-to-1 attack has done, and I think a result similar to that for the nationalists would be even worse than it is for the Republicans. So we'll probably forego making any offensive moves and attacks this impulse, and probably for the rest of the turn, not until the nationalists can get more troops on the board and get a little more combat power built up. So the question is, do we leave the militia unit in the hex with the cavalry, or do we try to have them ooze their way out of where they are now? What that will do is likely make the cavalry unit next turn much more vulnerable, obviously, to attack from the Republicans. If the nationalists could, however, win initiative again, or at least go prior to the Democrats, then the nationalists would have an opportunity probably to get that cavalry unit out of there. So I think that maybe is what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and we'll take a chance next turn, and for now we'll get Cartagena militia there. And do we want to move anybody else anywhere? I don't think so. I think things are kind of winding down here in Spain for this turn, particularly with so much of the Republicans face down and unable to do anything. The turn ends on a 2 or less. Let's see what see if the fascists end up ending the turn, and if so, this will have some implications for the initiative modifier, but they don't with an 8. The 8 means that the Democrats are up next. And I think really the only thing that was going on was here in Spain, and the Republicans have kind of shut themselves down with that big attack. I'm just going to go ahead and at this point we'll kind of drop out. I'll run through the next several impulses. Again, I don't see really anything changing here in Spain, and certainly nowhere else on the board. We'll see how far this goes, who ends the turn, whether there's any impact to the die roll or the initiative die roll modifiers for next turn. Well, as you can see, we had a few more impulses after we left off on the map there, where basically nothing really happened. Finally, the Democrats did end the turn in impulse number 20 here, and as a result, the Communists got fewer impulses than either of the other two ideologies, which means their marker is going to slide one to the right on the ideological initiative track here into the +2 box. Now, I've done the return to base and the final reorganization. All of the Spanish units, both nationalist and Republican, that were face down have been turned face up, and the Italian transports carrying the headquarters returned to base in Taranto. So now that's pretty much bringing us right up through production. This turn, production is, I think, going to be pretty much the same as last time. USSR is going to get 3 build points, Germany 7, and Italy 3 build points, and all 3 of those are also saving 1 oil resource. Japan is getting 6 build points without saving an oil. China gets 1, also not saving an oil. And then the Commonwealth with 5, and both France and the US are getting 3, and the 3 of those democracies are also saving 1 oil. So once we go through and get the builds figured out for this turn, I'll go ahead and show you what everyone has done. And I think what we'll do is probably wrap up this episode at that point. I think we're probably pushing an hour here. I've been yammering a lot throughout this video and been showing you the Spanish Civil War, at least this first real turn of it, in some detail. So I think we'll get to production and then wrap it up. We're going to begin with the fascists, and we'll start with Italy. Italy is going to lay down a light cruiser and also begin training some pilots. That's going to be a total of 3 build points for her. Germany is going to lay down a heavy cruiser, and they are going to get the second cycle of Scharnhorst. They're going to pull Scharnhorst out of the construction pool. That's actually only a cost of 2, because with Scharnhorst, even though it's a battleship, it's got a real nice cost breakdown here of 2 for the first cycle and only 1 for the second cycle. And Gneisenau, the sister ship, is the same way. So I would expect Germany to get Gneisenau going very shortly as well. So that's a total of 2 build points for Germany. And then finally, Japan is going to lay down yet another aircraft carrier, and she is going to start building a carrier plane to place on some of these carriers that she has been building over the last several months. I think I'm going to hold off on the nationalists. I'll cover the Spanish production at the very end. We'll move on to the communists now, and the Soviet Union has a political option that she's going to try to do here. So rather than getting herself too far into debt, she's just going to forego building anything this turn. So nothing for the Soviet Union this turn. For the democracies, China only has 2 yuan available. She's going to hold on to both of those, maybe try to build an infantry unit or something next turn. So nothing for the Chinese either. That brings us to the Commonwealth, who will be building a convoy point, kind of per standard. They are also going to be starting another aircraft carrier for a total of 3. The French actually have a little bit of money, so they're going on a bit of a spree for them. They are also starting an aircraft carrier and then training a pilot as well for a total of 4. And then finally, the United States is going to bring the USS Saratoga out of the construction pool and start the second cycle on her. Now, just like Lexington, she is a very expensive second cycle cost of 4. So that's all the Americans can really afford to do. That's actually going to put them into debt a little bit here. Now for the Spanish Republicans, they are going to replace the infantry division that they lost in the combat this turn. They're also building another infantry corps. And then finally, they are building a fighter. Now, that's a total of 7 build points. They have 9 production for the resources and cities they hold, but that has emptied their force pool. They don't have any other units available right now. So once the units that are on the production circle now get onto the map, she will have maxed out her armed forces, at least until we get to January, February of 1938, and we get the annual additions. Both sides will see at least a couple more units go into their force pool at that point. For the Nationalists are able to maximize the 6 build points they have by building 2 infantry corps. So they will be arriving here in November, December, and that is going to do it for production here of July, August 1937. That's also going to wrap up July, August 1937, the turn. And like I said just a few minutes ago, I'm going to go ahead and cut this here because I think this is probably right around an hour or so, typical length for our videos. And if I were to get into September, October, it could turn into a 2-hour video, which just means it's going to take me that much longer to get it edited and put up. So we'll stop here. This way I can maybe get this one up a little bit quicker turnaround from the video that just went up the other day. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time.